Starting off this countdown, we have the Blue Leaks. In June of 2020, following the killing of George Floyd and the protests, Anonymous leaked hundreds of gigabytes of law enforcement files. It has been named the Blue Leaks. Over 269 gigabytes of data were taken from over 200 law enforcement agencies. This included emails, audio recordings, videos, and documents. In total, there were millions of files leaked. Some of the leaked documents show that the FBI was monitoring the social media accounts of protesters, and they were also alerting local law enforcement about anti-police messages. Other documents showed that the FBI was tracking Bitcoin donations to protest groups, as well as highlighted some scandals and police misconduct. In our 9th spot, we have Trump's dirty laundry, and I don't mean like literally his stinky socks and undies. In May of 2020, Anonymous came after Trump during his presidency. This happened when Trump threatened to deploy his military force against the protesters. But Anonymous was like, nah, honey, you aren't doing that, and said they had dirt on him. They said that they would publish his dirty laundry. A couple of days later, they published 169 emails that mentioned Trump one way or another. Now, most of the emails weren't even bad, but it was just a scare tactic to show Trump, like, hey, we're not bluffing, okay? We got dirt on you. More on this in my next point. Coming in at number 8, we have Trump's connection to Jeffrey Epstein. So like I said, Anonymous leaked some emails about Trump. Well, they also threatened to release information connecting Trump to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Trump and Epstein have been photographed together on a number of occasions. Apparently, they also have hung out with each other too. Some believe that Trump was a part of Epstein's ring and also exploited young females. And Anonymous apparently has proof, including access to Epstein's address book and old court documents. Technically, I'm cheating with this point since they didn't leak this information, but they did expose that they have this information. In our 7th spot, we have the Brazilian government. In June of 2020, Anonymous released personal information on the Brazilian president and his family and cabinet. This caused a lot of chaos. The federal police and the Brazilian Congress began to investigate. In the end, it was revealed that the federal government used $2 million of the public's money to fund advertising on several websites. Most of the websites supported the president, which makes sense as to why they wanted to put money into them. Not only that, but Anonymous leaked a number of government officials' addresses, income, and other personal information. The personal addresses were a very serious issue because it puts them at risk for attacks. Moving on, at number 6, we have CSIS documents. So what I didn't know is that apparently Anonymous has some beef with the Canadian government. One of their first attacks leaked secrets about the foreign activities of the Canadian Secret Intelligence Service, aka the CSIS. It released information about the size of their network, what information they have access to, along with other sensitive government documents. The Canadian government has only admitted to having foreign stations in Washington, London, and Paris. But according to the documents leaked, they have over 25 foreign stations. And I quote, many of which are located in developing countries and/or unstable environments. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the secret federal document. In another attack against Canada, Anonymous leaked top secret documents outlining the redevelopment of Canada's key diplomatic centers in Britain, including selling, relocating, and refurbishing Canada's diplomatic buildings in London. Now, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's the fact that they got a hold of these top secret documents that's concerning. The documents were marked as confidence of the Queen's Privy Council, which basically means that it's top secret and private documents. Therefore, the government of Canada is looking into its own people to see if someone among them is leaking these documents to Anonymous, or maybe they're a part of Anonymous. In our 4th spot, we have the #OpsWakeUp21. In January of 2021, Anonymous attacked the government of Malaysia. They defaced 17 government and university websites. This was part of their campaign called #OpsWakeUp21. Basically, the purpose of this campaign was to highlight the poor security of the government's websites and to warn people about it. In a post, they said, and I quote, "Greetings, we are Anonymous Malaysia. This is message to Government Malaysia. Your security system is low. All data may be leaked. This can cause unwanted hackers selling all your information. Basically, they accuse the government for keeping silent and covering up a number of data breaches that occurred over the years. The government knew that personal information of their citizens was being obtained and sold, and they just kinda covered it up until Anonymous exposed them. Coming in at number 3, we have Anonymous Malaysia Part 2. During the Anonymous Malaysia attack, they also revealed that Facebook was selling private information to government agencies. In a post, Anonymous said, and I quote, "If you're a hacktivist willing to, or a man who just wants to protect his freedom of information and join the cause, and kill Facebook for your own privacy. Facebook has sold information to government agencies and gave secret access to information security firms so they can spy on people from around the world. You can't hide from reality where you are. You're neither safe from any government. Someday you'll look back on this and realize what we've done here is right. You'll thank the internet government. We will not harm you, but we will save you." Okay guys, it is time to deactivate Facebook. Nice. Coming in at number 2, we have Epic. In September of 2021, Anonymous leaked data from Epic, which is basically a domain registrar and a web hosting company that has provided service to websites that publish neo-Nazi and extremist content. It's a pretty controversial platform, and Anonymous leaked details of every domain that was ever hosted or registered through them. It also leaked a number of personal information of their customers, like their purchase records, emails, invoices, and credit card information. Over 15 million email addresses were exposed. In fact, they released 3 rounds of data on their website. The first was in February of 2021, the second in September, and the third in October. In October, they actually leaked information on documents belonging to the Texas Republican Party. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the NSA. So thanks to Edward Snowden, we all know that the NSA was spying on Americans through their phone records. Well, Anonymous just exposed the existence of a secret NSA and FBI program called PRISM. This program allows the NSA and FBI to take photos, videos, emails, and chats from the servers of 9 different internet companies, including Microsoft, Facebook, Google, and Apple. Anonymous leaked 13 huge documents about this program, and it revealed that the NSA is not only spying on Americans, but also citizens of over 35 different countries as well. Anonymous said, and I quote, "We bring this to you so that you know just how little rights you have. Your privacy and freedoms are slowly being taken away from you in closed doors meetings, in laws buried in bills, and by people who are supposed to be protecting you." Starting off this countdown, we have the Vipholm experiments. This was a series of experiments in Sweden from 1945 to 1955. It's literally going to make you sick to your stomach when you find out what they did. Basically, they force-fed people with mental illness sweets to see if sugar was related to tooth decay. Imagine people just cramming food down your throat against your will. It's very gross. These experiments were conducted by the government and sponsored by the sugar industry. The experiments lasted for about 2 years, and by then the teeth of about 50 of the subjects in the experiment had been completely ruined. In our 9th spot, we had the UK Special Demonstration Squad. This is the name of a group of undercover police officers in the UK. Now, the things that they did are going to shock you. For example, they would steal birth certificates and identities of people that had died at a young age. They'd make sure that they would be around their age and then use their identities. The younger the person died, the better, because that means they didn't already live a life that they would have to cover up. And then they would go around with this new identity. Some cases they actually got into relationships with women, but the whole time they did so just to spy on them. In November of 2015, the Metropolitan Police Force apologized to 7 women tricked into relationships by these officers. Like, imagine that, dating someone you're madly in love with, sometimes even having a kid with them, only for them to be like, "Oh, sorry, gotta go, was only dating you to get intel on you and your friend circle." It's disgusting, and it's actually happened to multiple women. In our 8th spot, we have the radioactive waste. Apparently, there's a huge radioactive dumping zone located in Tonawanda, New York. In fact, they dumped more than 37 million gallons of radioactive waste from their World War II atomic bomb tests. This area has a high rate of cancer and thyroid conditions, and this is the reason why, and no one's talking about it. In our 7th spot, we have the hepatitis tests. In 1956, the US government began running tests on young individuals living at the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island. This was a state-supported institution for children with intellectual disabilities. And what they did to these students was give them hepatitis in order to track the development of the viral infection. Of course, they were being experimented on without knowledge or consent. To make matters worse, the study lasted 14 years. They also injected them with a number of drugs to see what they would do to their body and the hepatitis. Imagine intentionally making a group of people sick for an experiment. The grossest part is that when the government was exposed for this project, they tried to justify their actions by saying that these people were probably gonna wind up contracting it anyways. In our 6th spot today, we have Operation Popeye. This is another very wild one. Operation Popeye was a highly classified weather modification program during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972. You heard me correctly. The government learned how to control the weather. Basically, they wanted to increase rainfall in certain areas to prevent enemies and military supply trucks from being able to travel. In fact, they caused a number of landslides and flooding in that area. Weather manipulation has since been banned from use for military gain. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with HIV. In the 1980s, the HIV epidemic broke out. No one knew how it spread, they just knew that it should be feared, and tons of LGBTQ+ community members were sadly contracting the virus. Well, rumor has it that HIV was a government experiment that was meant to wipe out the undesirables. Of course, the US government has denied this claim, and it's just a conspiracy, we don't know for sure. But based on the other experiments done on minority groups, it's hard to know what to believe. In our 4th spot today, we have Project 112 and Project SHAD, or SHAD. Project 112 and Project SHAD took place from 1962 to 1973 and involved a number of veterans or military personnel. Basically, both tests involved exposing these people to substances they might want to use in warfare. Nearly 6,000 people were exposed to Coxiella burnetii, which is Q fever, Staphylococcal enterotoxin B, which causes food poisoning, and sarin and soman gas. Sarin is a very, very dangerous nerve gas, and soman can cause death in minutes. Both can be fatal if only the tiniest amount gets on the skin. These men had no clue that they were being exposed to this. Moving on to number 3, we have Project Sunshine. This is another very messed up government project. During the 1950s, the US government was using stillborns to conduct radiation tests on. They wanted to determine the effects that radiation would have on humans and how much we could withstand in case of a nuclear fallout. They called this Project Sunshine, and it was anything but rainbows and sunshine. What's sad is that the government was stealing body parts and tissues from morgues without families' consent. It's said that more than 1,500 samples were gathered worldwide. This is incredibly sad and sick. Coming in at number 2, we have the syphilis experiments. In 1932, the US Public Health Service created an experiment to see the health effects of untreated syphilis. But the test subjects were told that they were receiving free treatment to cure their syphilis. And that was a lie. Instead of giving the men the recommended penicillin treatment, they gave them placebos, like aspirin. Sadly, 28 men died of syphilis because of these experiments, 100 more passed away from syphilis-related complications, and 40 spouses contracted this disease. And 19 women who gave birth passed on syphilis to their newborn children. In 1997, Bill Clinton apologized to the survivors and their families on behalf of the government. And he admitted that the tests were, and I quote, profoundly and morally wrong. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the radiation tests. In 1953, a number of tests were done on pregnant women to see the effects that radioactive iodine would have on them and their newborns. These studies were terrible. In one study, researchers gave these women doses of iodine 131. Sadly, they all miscarried. When they did, they continued to study the women's aborted embryos. Another study took place after World War II. 829 pregnant mothers in Tennessee were given vitamin drinks. They were informed that these drinks would improve their health and their babies. But it actually contained radioactive iron, and the researchers wanted to see how fast the radioisotopes crossed into the placenta. Several of the young passed away from these experiments. 4 died from cancers as a result of the experiments, and the women experienced rashes, bruises, anemia, hair and tooth loss, and cancer as well. Meanwhile, they just wanted the best for their babies and thought that this drink was going to help them, not kill them.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have SIM cards. We see all the time in movies and shows when people are trying to be super secret, they smash their phone and their SIM card, but as it turns out, maybe we should all be smashing our SIM cards, super secret lifestyle or not. In February of 2015, it was reported that Snowden provided documents that showed that the NSA and GCHQ had hacked into a Dutch company that is responsible for manufacturing and supplying 2 billion SIM cards per year, and they supply places like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and a variety of other providers. While this hack would suggest that the agencies would then now have access to billions of unique encryption keys, which could potentially allow them to bypass wireless providers and monitor both voice and data transmissions of every user that has a SIM card made by this company. The company did reply to the situation and said that they had been the target of at least 2, quote, particularly sophisticated intrusions, and they suggested that they believed that the NSA and the GCHQ were responsible, but the company then denied that the hack was successful in gaining access to those encryption keys.
Number 9. Quantum computer. This next one is eye-opening, to say the least. Computers are getting more and more advanced by the day. Deepfakes are going to ruin my life. They're getting really good at those. I feel like an old man every time I see those and fall for it. But thanks to our man Snowden, it was reported in the Washington Post on January 2nd, 2014, that the NSA is working hard at creating their own computer. How fun must that be? It's called the quantum computer, and it cost about $80 million to create. And no, it can't send you back in time. This computer is safely stored in a massive room-sized metal box, which is not intimidating at all, and it's part of a program called Penetrating Hard Targets. I want to make so many jokes, but I won't. So it can break encryptions for just about anything. Finance records, medical, your old MSN, probably. What a nightmare that would be. The NSA is well on their way to breaking every form of public encryption. This quantum computer can theoretically break through any RSA encryption, which for the average computer today, that takes, I don't know, years, but this supercomputer can break through a lot faster. I'm talking days. Just don't go in my MSN, please.
In our number 8 spot today, we have Project Dishfire. It was reported by The Guardian that it had been revealed that the NSA collects 200 million text messages a day from around the world. They then use these messages to pull the details of certain location information, contact networks, and the credit card details of different mobile users. It was also reported that the NSA also provided British intelligence agencies with all of the data, just without the actual context of the text messages. So the NSA has all your secrets and nudies, but at least they didn't share them? I don't know. Basically, they have all of this data and at any point could potentially extract certain information like past travel plans, your financial transactions, your contacts, regardless of whether or not you were being investigated for something. Yes, this sounds illegal, unethical, and a little shady, and this revelation all came before former President Barack Obama gave a speech about proposed policy changes in reaction to the whistleblowing that was going on around Snowden and the NSA.
Number 7. Friends without benefits. Even allies of the United States are not safe here. Thanks to Snowden, at the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the states were spying on Germany, France, and Spain. The NSA had tapped into 35 phones, which, by the way, not just a couple of random dudes, they were spying on 35 world leaders. One of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA after finding out, of course, and said this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. Really went personal with the friends comment there. It's like when you show somebody a photo on your phone and they start swiping, like, hi, hello, betrayal, see ya. Now, as you hear this, you're thinking, well, I'm not a world leader, what's the big deal here? Well, it was also reported that the NSA was monitoring phone calls in Spain for the average folk. They monitored about 60 million calls in 1 month, so yeah, world leader or not, be a little concerned about these guys. Maybe.
In our number 6 spot today, we have the Brazil spying scandal. It was reported by The Guardian that Brazil was second only to the United States in terms of the amount of communications that were being subjected to surveillance by the NSA. This means that the NSA were seriously spying on millions of Brazilians, including the emails and phone calls of their president. At the G20 summit that that year, which took place in Russia, Brazil's president at the time, Dilma Rousseff, had a one-on-one meeting with Obama in reference to this. He said that he would look into it and get back to her, but before he could, more NSA tea was spilled, and it was revealed that the agency had also targeted Petrobras, which is Brazil's state oil company. This led the president to call this new information industrial espionage, and as a result, she called off her scheduled visit to the White House and demanded answers. The called-off visit was important because it was to be the first state visit by a Brazilian president in about 2 decades, and although the Obama administration claimed that it was a joint decision made by both presidents, some media outlets described it as the sternest punishment that had been received at that time in response to all of these NSA leaks. This also led Brazil to take a multitude of steps to hopefully get away from the American-run internet.
Number 5. Backup. When Glenn Greenwald kicked this whole thing off in 2013 with Snowden and his reveals, it was this massive security breach obviously. Snowden was of course in hot water immediately, but he was ahead of the game from the start. See, Snowden had told Greenwald that if anything crazy happens to him, well, he'll just leak even more information. If Snowden was unable to access these encrypted documents on one of his 4 laptops, then it was set up to automatically send those private documents to higher ups, aka the people directly involved in the leak. On top of that, Snowden reminded The Guardian that he has many more secrets to spill, specifically the NSA's surveillance systems. This is why you make backups. Duly noted, Snowden.
In our number 4 spot today, we have the embassy catastrophe. There was a document from 2007 that was leaked which named 38 different embassies and missions that were so-called targets of US surveillance. This document didn't quite make it clear whether or not these targets were being looked into by only the NSA or if the CIA and FBI were also involved. The document described certain things like bugging fax machines with devices that allowed them to listen in on conversation, and the document also listed the names of different programs that are used within the embassies. The document showed that the embassies targeted weren't just those of countries who seemed to be enemies with the United States, and instead included places like India and Mexico, Greece, and Turkey. It appears as if the goal was to gain insider information into the diplomatic relations between the targets and the United States. The EU embassy in Washington, D.C. was one of the targets on this document, and this leak had the potential to have jeopardized one of the largest attempted free trade agreements in the world, because shortly after this all came out, negotiations were set to begin between the EU and the United States. The French president at the time made his anger about the situation very public and stated that all future negotiations will only be made under the agreement that the United States cease all unauthorized surveillance of any EU buildings or personnel.
Number 3. China. I mentioned earlier that summit where the United States originally wanted to call out China for cyber attacks, but instead Snowden leaked a PowerPoint training slideshow and the tables were turned just like that. Snowden revealed himself as this massive spy kid on June 12th, and he said he was planning on remaining in Hong Kong until he was kicked out. But in his first press interview since coming out with all this information, he informed South China's Morning Post that the NSA was hacking Chinese and Hong Kong computers since back in 2009. That's a long time ago. It's like when Avatar 1 came out. That's how long ago that was. More specifically, Snowden said that the NSA hacked the Chinese University of Hong Kong, aka the heart of all internet traffic in Hong Kong. Now, of course, this is eye-opening, but there's many who see this hack attack as a good thing. See, citizens want to know what their government's up to, and honestly, I myself would love to know if the NSA was rummaging through my chats. So a poll was conducted on June 10th and 11, and apparently 44% of Americans were on board with Snowden's outing. They were with him, and 42% of Americans say that he's a bad boy. 57% were not a fan of the NSA's action, while 37% were on board. 30% of folks liked the fact that they were being spied on. That's some weird kind of kink, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you want the NSA in your Dropbox? Let us know in the comments your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you.
In our number 2 spot today, we have caller information. In 2013, it was reported by The Guardian that, according to the documents that were leaked by Snowden, the Obama administration has allowed the NSA to collect different caller information from Verizon. This was done through what was called a quote business records provision of the Patriot Act that was established under the presidency of George W. Bush. It allowed the government to order Verizon Verizon to hand over caller information every single day. The information included things like the time, location, and duration of the call. The information began being collected under the Bush administration in 2001, and they were collected from AT&T, Verizon, and Bell South. Of course, once these documents were leaked and the information became public knowledge, US officials began trying to reassure the public that this surveillance was somehow necessary and was actually a program vital to national security, but many people rightfully felt like the spying was an unnecessary invasion of their privacy. This one is tricky because there certainly is a fine line with these things.
And finally, number 1. PowerPoint. Nothing sounds less cool than a leaked 41-slide PowerPoint presentation, but when it comes to the NSA, odds are it's going to be a little juicy. This slideshow is used to train US intelligence, and I gotta say, 41 pages? That's it? I did 45 on medieval knights in high school. Step your game up. This program called Prism cost about $20 million a year, and it was the highlight of this leak. Prism kicked off back in 2007. Originally, they partnered with Microsoft, but once they were attached to Apple, come 2012, well, that's when things got a little bit fishy, as most things are with Apple, specifically their maps. That was horrible. The PowerPoint confirmed that the NSA has access to servers belonging to massive tech giants like Google, Skype, or even YouTube. Yeah, right here, they're listening right now. So your search history, emails, anything that rolls through those, usernames, passwords, well, they've got them. Even Skaterboy69 and Hotmail, odds are, they're already looking. You're done. You're canceled, Brad. There was a summit in California which originally was tense. The United States were accusing China of cyber attacks, but right after Edward leaked this Prism T, they didn't have much power at that summit. China and Europe's citizens weren't too pleased here, and honestly, yeah, it's a botched meeting. I can understand why.